So, welcome to another episode of Solutionaries. This is not a long show today, but this is more a promotion. This is kind of a red alert to people who might be watching this of what's really going on behind the curtain right now, specifically in California, specifically around water mismanagement and privatization, the fabricated drought, and also what's happening with the potential of some catastrophic events related to the lack of attention and awake leadership around potential catastrophic events that could occur. So I'm very honored. I've had him on the show before. We are going to be doing a broadcast on Sunday, July 31st. It'll be a 90-minute to 2-hour broadcast on, again, Sunday, July 31st from 10 a.m. Pacific time up until potentially 12 noon. But we're really going to dig in. It's going to be not a lot of chit chat. We're going to get down to big issues. We're going to look at some of the real numbers and statistics, and almost under a forensic microscope, we're going to look at what's really going on in California. So we've decided, based on Patrick's book, that we're going to call this webinar Truth Decoded, and looking deeper into California's water issues. But without any further ado, I'm going to introduce an amazing advocate for human beings and for the environment and for water. He's been doing this work for over 35 years, but we have Patrick Poorgans from Planetary Solutions. So again, thank you for your time, Patrick.
Thanks for having me on, Michael.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to get right to the point with this little promotion for the event on the 31st. And I think people can tell by looking behind you that you have decades of research, and you really, more than anyone I've ever met, know what's going on. So what are we going to talk about on the 31st as regards to water, privatization, mismanagement, the Delta, and give people a little taste of where we're going to go with that webinar?
Well, the first thing I think we need to focus on is the number of disasters that we've experienced here in California since the mid-1990s. Now, according to the Legislative Analyst's Office here in California, we had 309 major disasters, mostly flood and fire-related. So the question then becomes, why is it that we don't seem to be prepared each time these emergencies emerge? And what it comes back down to, based upon my 45 years of experience, is that we have a dysfunctional government. It went from dysfunctional to bifunctional. And what I mean by bifunctional is that, these major corporations and billionaire landowners essentially have now got control of the decision makers and those people that are appointed to specific positions in government, like on the State Water Resources Control Board, the Resources Agency, Cal EPA, and so forth and so on. What's happening now is that, first of all, they're not enforcing the laws. Okay, that's number one. And the biggest violator of the law here in California is the state of California. Now, what I mean by that is that if you look at what's going on, for example, in the Delta, the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, which also includes the San Francisco Bay, we spent about $6.5 billion there in the last decade or so to purportedly increase its sustainability. However, most recently at a State Board Water Resource Control Board meeting, the chairperson conceded that the Delta is on the verge of an ecological collapse. Well, that's wrong. It's already collapsing. And it's been collapsing now since, they've had these dog and pony show hearings going on. Now, I've attended every one of these hearings, and I testified. I'm an expert witness. And I showed them that, basically what's happening here is that this Delta has become the sacrificial lamb and the golden goose. And what I mean by that is that all of these various government agencies and NGOs who've been working on this so-called plan to improve the Delta since 1994 have essentially bought into taking money that comes from the sale of general obligation bonds, which is borrowed in the people's names, okay? Now, every dollar we borrow from that, we have to pay $2 in interest. So if we borrow $25 billion, we have to pay back $50 billion, okay? So in the interim, this has been going on now since 1994. We're now in 2022, and we're not even close to getting a resolution to the problem because they're taking the bond money and they're giving it to the NGOs. These are environmental groups, conservation groups, not all of them, but there's the majority, the big ones. They're now, on their board of directors. If you do research, it indicates that, people like Goldman Sachs, Ms. Barney, so and so, they sit on the board of directors of these organizations. So of course, they're not going to get anything done. That's why they're there.
Right, and also, Patrick, as you had mentioned, and we're going to talk more about, one of the problems to the manufactured drought in California is overdevelopment of 700,000 or more acres. They want to develop it for unsustainable housing. Also, what's happening with privatization and mismanagement, like you're talking about the Sacramento River Delta, and also what's happening with the expansion of some of these large agrogarchies, like the Resnicks throughout Central Valley, that are basically trying to irrigate saline, agricultural soil, but in the same time, they're telling small farms to shut down, and they're trying to cap people's water wells because they're basically pirating a majority of the water. Is that true?
Yes, by and large, what you're saying is accurate. What's happening here is you're going to let's look at the 2012 to 2016 drought as an example. So during that period, the state implemented what they called mandatory cutbacks in the urban sector. So we had to cut back 25%. And if you didn't cut back, you were penalized, and they did fine you. Tear out your gardens, tear out your shrubs, tear out whatever. In the interim, between 2012 and 2016, according to the data we received from the state's Department of Food and Agriculture, they were planting 40,000 new acres of almonds a year. Okay.
In Central Valley.
In the Central Valley, Resnick in particular, he's got 26.7 square miles of just almonds. Now, we went from 400,000 acres of almonds to 1 million acres of almonds, in that period of time. So almonds consume about 3.7 million acre feet of water. Now, if you take that and put it into perspective, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, who provides water to 19 million customers, only provides 1.3 million acre feet of water, okay? So the almonds are using 3 times as much water as the urban users. That's number one.
And let's be clear about that too, Patrick, excuse me, that, Resnick is a multi-billionaire from Southern California. He also not only does almonds, but also pomegranates, and it's kind of like one of the huge agrogarchies in California. And as much as we appreciate the state's climate, being able to produce so much food, we're seeing all over the world in places like Sri Lanka and India, where farmers are starting to revolt because, like you're saying, what's coming in is the government, the broken leadership that's supposed to represent people, is selling off these resources, profiting from it, and they're going over to large corporations that are basically lobbying and buying off their allegiance to shut down the small guys and create really a monopoly around water, a monopoly around food. And of course, the big elephant in the room is also the unsustainable amount of development in California, especially with, right now I was up in Mount Shasta, the Sacramento River is getting lower and drying up. Of course, that feeds into the Sacramento River Delta. I was just in Las Vegas, where Lake Powell and the Hoover Dam is basically at record lows, and even the Rio Grande and the Colorado River are drying up. So, these are all factors that play into, but as you're saying, there are some solutions, and I know we're going to talk about that on the 31st of what people can do. I know a lot of people feel apathetic or powerless against these powerful forces, but there are some solutions of what people can do. So with the minute we have left, because we want to kind of entice people to join you on July 31st, again at 10 a.m. And I will say that this broadcast will also be a fundraiser to help support you and your nonprofit's work, because again, you've been doing this for 40 some odd years, and it takes a lot of energy, time, and resources. And this is also an issue that impacts everybody, whether, wherever you live. So what are some other really important points that we can hit before we finish this little promotional piece here today?
Number one, we're going to provide the formula that's being used by the billionaires, that where they use the tax base, the credit rating, and the natural resources of the state of California to amass their ill-gained fortunes, okay? We're going to show how they're behind orchestrating and promoting these drought, scenarios. Now, that's not to say we're not in a drought, but what I'm saying is that because we don't deal with the fundamental issue that we only get so much water, we can't keep expanding, permanent crops in light of the fact that because of climate change and other variables, that's only going to create the condition to become more exacerbated. That's number one. Number two, we want to show that why should the public conserve water if we're going to be charged more for less water? How does that make any sense? Why was it that the building permits were doubling during the 2012-2016 drought when, we were cutting back? Why was it that the Delta had to take a major hit and altogether there were 3.2 million acre feet of water that was quote unquote saved? Where did the water go? Well, it went down there for those four large landowners that own 720,000 acres that have master plans that are already in place. They're already developing out. So the only way they can continue to develop, and thanks to the Sierra Club, is they have to have a firm, reliable supply of water. That's why they're infusing all this money that's coming from the general obligation bonds to pay for increasing water supply reliability for them, because the state water projects all, made contracts for more water than they can provide. So we're now taking that hit, and now that's got to stop. And the only way we can stop this is we have to stop the flow of cash, the money. That's the only way we can get these people to wake up. And as individuals, we will provide ways in which every one of us can make steps in our lives to change this thing so we can have a planet that's not only sustainable, but it's worth living in, not just for us, but for our future generations. That's what we're talking about here. We need to mutually coexist. We need to get beyond this left and right wing nonsense. Controversial. And we need to realize we're all dependent on the earth and the life support system.
I thank you for that. And that is really common ground that can bring everyone together. And that's why this webinar on July 31st at 10 a.m. till approximately 12 noon on Sunday, July 31st Pacific time is so crucial, because when we were talking about doing this webinar, you were saying we should call it Wake Up California, because people want to kind of complain about things, but they don't want to look at the solutions, and they really don't know the root cause of why we have these problems. And one other thing I think you're going to touch upon, like you had known about the potential dam failure at Lake Oroville Dam months before that was going to happen. And you have a lot of really horrifying details about the lack of awake leadership and the need to bolster infrastructure or change infrastructure to protect Californians from really catastrophic events, including the more wild than wildfires that have been raging across the state. So I really do appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to this interview on July 31st. And what would you like to leave us with before we wrap up today?
I'd like to leave you with the fact that, the state of California, although they appear to be concerned about climate change, they're not really dealing with the climate change. As you mentioned, there was a major, catastrophic incident that could have been the most deadliest, devastating catastrophe in the history of the United States back in 2017 up at Oroville Dam, okay, when the spillway collapsed. So we went back and did some additional research, and what we found, and this is based on U.S. Geological Survey data, okay, that right now, when we get another arc storm, which is an atmospheric river, okay, and we get wet conditions up at Oroville, when that water starts coming into that reservoir from that watershed, 40 inches of rain is probable. That water is going to come down over that spillway at between 250,000, and what's going to come over the top of that dam equals 600,000 cubic feet a second, which according to USGS is going to take $750 billion worth of the public and private assets out, wash it all the way out, break the levees in the Delta, and push it all the way into the San Francisco Bay, okay? That's a fact. Now, the state is not dealing with that. They're coming up with sunny day forecasts. They're not dealing with the real issues. And the level of risk that the people are being, confronted with is not only unacceptable, it's insane. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's what we're going to do.
I was actually on the Feather River in Oroville having lunch at a Chinese restaurant the day when I got the alert on my phone to evacuate the town. So I've been literally at the front lines of when that original pretty catastrophic but almost disastrous flood happened. So this is something, again, affects people all throughout Central Valley, people in Sacramento. So again, I really appreciate your time. Again, I want to remind people that we're going to do Truth Decoded webinar on Sunday, July 31st, 10 a.m. to 12 noon Pacific time. It will be on Zoom. We are asking a donation for this because we're also trying to support Patrick and his forensic work to do what he does best, which is taking on some of these major issues that affect us all. And also, I just want to comment and compliment you, Patrick, for decades of successful work that you've already done through Planetary Solutions. Why don't you just give us one or two quick success stories that you've done? I know you'd mentioned about the drainage and sewers and some of that, but just one or two quick success stories before we finish.
Well, basically, we stopped every major water development project that the Department of Water Resources has proposed in the last 20 years. And the reason why we did that is because the State Water Project was underfinanced and contractually overcommitted from the beginning. We had hearings and showed that the agricultural contractors were in default. Okay, that was number one. Number two, we were the ones that put down, when you look at a storm drain and it says, don't dump into this storm drain, that was our work going back to the mid-1970s. We also were able to get people, we saved about somewhere between 500,000 to 600,000 acres of land from being taken away from private people. In addition to that, we got them to stop they wanted to sell 19 state properties, okay, in order to make up for their so-called budget deficit. We stopped that to show that was a scam. And that would have cost the people of California another $6.5 billion. We actually got our clients over $1 billion back from different disasters that were created by the government. So I've been involved in every major litigation on flooding in the state of California since 1980. Now, on that last note, there is a book. It's called Truth Decoded, and they want like $15 for that book. I don't make any money from that book. If there's someone out there that can show me how to put that book up there for $1, I'd like to do that. I'd like to have everybody see that book, because there's something in there for everyone. It's talking about mutual coexistence. It's talking about let's get along with each other, because we know the system that we've been using now, Manifest Destiny, it's suicidal.
Absolutely, and the broken system is collapsing pretty quick, whether it's environmental or economic, and we can see so many of these things happen. So Patrick Pourgans, I want to thank you for your time. And this video will be going out with an email. We're going to ask anyone who sees it or receives it, please send it out to your network. And we're going to invite people to join you for a very informative couple hours of discourse. We will have questions and answers at the end, where we're gonna rip back the curtain so people can actually understand the truth of what's really going on here in California. And again, try to generate some support for your organization, Planetary Solutions. So thank you, sir, for your service. I'm not sure if you were officially in the military, but I want to thank you for your service to humanity and to the environment and to California. You truly are an inspiration for all of us.
Yeah, if we're anything, we're in the people's army, okay? That's all we know. We're here to serve the people, and the people need to be served by the government. If the government's not doing its job, then it's our job to get them to do it, and that's what we've done.
Amen. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to our discourse, and I hope that people spread the word and we make this a successful event, and it might even be like an ongoing series if people are really interested. So again, Patrick Pourgans from Planetary Solutions, have a great evening, and we'll be joining you soon for this webinar.
Thank you also.